And so we got the excavator onto the river, and I noticed the need was that there needed to be water. And so I ran home, got a case of water, handed them out, and those went by very quickly. I had raided my cupboards for snacks, and they ate those, and then it was, y'all are gonna get hungry. And another friend of mine came out with burgers, and people were just busily getting in and helping and doing what they could.
Introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Hi, my name is Joy Molina, and I'm a resident of Ingram, Texas. I live on the river. And just to set the tone or the plot of my story, I actually lost my job the day before the flood. I was hanging out with friends in Fredericksburg, and noticed there was some rain coming on the way home. It was in the green, all set to go home. No concerns there. But I did get home, and for whatever reason, at 3:45 a.m., my phone went off with a warning. And like every other typical flash flood warning, for whatever reason, I screenshotted it and threw my phone back on the nightstand and went back to bed, and had subsequent alarms that day and just ignored them all. But then at 7 a.m., my friend calls me and says, "Joy, there's been a flood." And I'm thinking, a flash flood, low water crossing, we may not be able to cross the bridge. And I peeked out the window, and the water was up all the way to the bank. And my neighbors were already outside checking things out. And we honestly didn't process the gravity of what had just happened. And we were walking around looking for arrowheads, and we actually drove down the river to the Indian Creek Bridge to see the crossing, and clearly we were not going to be able to get out. I was in sandals, my kids are in sandals, and the mud was up to our shins, and clearly we were not going to be able to get out for a while on either side of our road. And so we went back up to the road and started talking to the neighbor, and then it hit me, because it's unfathomable that, so I live across the bank from the HTR and Blue Oak campers, and I've always referred to them as my weekend neighbors. And a confession, sometimes they're annoying with music when I want to sit out there and just enjoy the quiet and the peace and the quiet. And for the first time, I wish they were annoying me. So I talked to the neighbor, and he had said that he awoke at 4:30 in the morning to the people screaming for help. And then I looked on social media, and the enjoyment of water risen, because the beaver were up, jumping out on the bank, running up the hill, jumping back in the water, and riding it down over and over again. Then it hit what had happened, that everybody across the bank were gone. And the helicopters started, and they were so loud, and knowing what they were doing was awful. I had to go inside and go to sleep that off. We couldn't leave, and the helicopters just wouldn't stop. So it was a time to pray. And thankfully we had gone shopping, and so we're flooded in. The water, thankfully, I live about 35 to 40 feet up. The water had gone up about 30 feet and kissed the back end of my neighbor's back end of their foundation. And by the time I woke up, the water had receded to about 25 feet. And so the stairs were completely underwater. And that was day one. And then day two, again, we woke up to nonstop helicopters, and I told the kids, I guess we need to see if there's anything on our banks. And so for about 2 hours, we searched, found a lot of clothes, Adirondack chairs. We noticed there were fish in our fire circle and put a couple back in the river who were very happy. They were already on their sides, but very much alive. That was day 2. Well, thankfully, by the grace of God, because we found out later there were people on our bank, but me and my children did not find anyone. But we found part of the Hills clothing and life jackets and floaties and just everything that you would see for a weekend barbecue. That was day 2. By the end of day 2, we were able to get out and went into town, and I just felt helpless because I wanted to help, but it was getting late by that time of the day, and people had already helped for the day. I know people were at Ingram High School and City West Church, and Grape Juice, I know, was serving meals, and everything had been taken care of for that day, and really didn't know, just wanted to help. And day 3, that was Monday morning, early in the morning, equine search and rescue happened onto my property with an AFP reporter and said, can we search your property? I said, absolutely, you can search our property. And they started walking with one guy on foot. I ran and got my boots and followed him and very inquisitively began asking questions. And it's just a very kind man who honestly was trying to do a job to inform people what was going on and not have just you could tell his heart was in his recording and his interviews and trying to get good pictures. We happened on Fredericksburg Volunteer Fire Department and then Willow City Fire Department, and they said, does anybody have an excavator? And I said, my neighbor does. And so I went home and said, Daniel, they need you. And the only way to get onto the river was to clip my neighbor's fence. I hadn't met him at the time and figured we're just going to clip your fence and we'll say sorry later. And so we got the excavator onto the river, and I noticed the need was that there needed to be water. And so I ran home, got a case of water, handed them out, and those went by very quickly. I had raided my cupboards for snacks, and they ate those, and then it was, y'all are gonna get hungry. And another friend of mine came out with burgers, and people were just busily getting in and helping and doing what they could. And so I just phoned my son, who works at Chick-fil-A at the time, and said, hey, can you get me like 25 Chick-fil-A sandwiches and go by Cross Kingdom Church and get some Gatorade? And of course, Chick-fil-A found out what was going on as far as why I had ordered 25 sandwiches, and they comped it. And so my son went by Cross Kingdom, picked up Gatorade, and then just distributed that out to the guys. That day, I had horrible blisters on my feet, but in about, according to my phone, almost 9 miles. And the next day, we went out again, and my landlord said that I could use his side-by-side. And so it became a tool to run guys, to fill water coolers, to make sure people were hydrated and fed, and they needed to, if they needed something, I was just happily, willingly, readily available to assist them in any way that I could. And then so that was day 2. On day 3, we went out again, and I ran into Intrepid Care and a group of other volunteers that are retired veterans, retired first responders. A group, I didn't even know who they were. I just know it was John and Mike and Wyatt and Seggy, and just a group of guys who had banded together and started getting men on chainsaws. And so they started collecting. They had, I think, 1 tent or 2 tents at this time, and maybe 1 table. And we just started. They're like, Miss Joy, do you think you can take me up the river so we can start scouting new spots? And they're dispersing guys and making sure that chainsaws are going out. And I think that was day 3. At some point, also a reporter had showed up at my house, Miss Rodriguez, and she was with the Daily Wire, and said, can I have your story? I said, well, I'm kind of busy. So if you'd like, you can just hop on the side-by-side and I can just show you what we're doing. And she's like, okay, let's go. And so she went with me to fill coolers and make sure people were hydrated and fed, and tools were, being moved, and people were being picked up and dropped off. And then that one tent ended up moving further down the river in subsequent days to a neighbor's porch, and it just continued. And then I remember it was just that, running supplies and people. But then I remember we hit the big spot that was several stories tall, several stories wide, and several stories deep, and you just knew there was people there who didn't make it. And the gentlemen, they started just organizing. It was just very organized. It seems like we just worked very symbiotically. God really positioned me in a place where I wasn't doing search and rescue, as far as He didn't have me looking for people who didn't survive. It was my job to make sure that those guys were taken care of so that they could continue working and that they were fed and had everything that they needed to do what they were doing. So I was there in a very supportive role. That as the week went by and the next week went by, we ended up at camp at Saddlewood Estates. And we were under a gazebo, and these veterans, they make calls, and which I find out later is Intrepid Care. People are ready and willing to help. I think it was on a Saturday, suddenly 6 4-wheelers and 2 side-by-sides show up at our camp. I believe it was 6, and maybe it was 6 total. We ended up with water stations, and just the outpouring of the community was incredible. And because I was using the side-by-side to get home, I will say it was a very healing journey to go home every day. I was up there from 7:30 to sundown for 3 weeks, to suddenly see the river slowly be a little cleaner, and things starting to somewhat find a new normal. But at the same time, because relationships were forging so quickly from the people on the river, and you just saw the best of people. You saw grass catered numerous times, another barbecue place catered, and IV drips, massages, everything. Everybody just wanted to do something. We had the owners of Subway come out, and the daughter of the owner, she was a Camp Mystic counselor. And so I said, do you want to go down onto the river? And she said, I would. And so I took her. There's just some of the rides that I took onto the river so that people could see the devastation. You could see their memories, their heartbreak, and to mourn that with them, and just to be a word of encouraging. And I had one wife who was so sad. She's like, I feel horrible. I haven't been here serving with my husband. And it was just an honor to tell her, you're here in spirit with him. You're married and you come together as a team, even when you're home. And I said, when he gets home, are you there to say, I love you and I'm so glad you're back? I said, then you did your part. And so we formed a camp and a solid, and we continued to disperse people. People from Rockwall. We had people in from North Dakota. We had people in from Boston, Houston, like all San Antonio, and it's just something to tell a person into their eyes, we're so glad you're here. Thank you. And I just felt so overwhelmingly loved by the United States. I mean, Texas rose strong, and Kerrville, the hill country, is what the hill country is a place where people are kind, and they welcome you in. I always say, like, when you move here, people say, where are you from? And you're like, well, I'm from San Angelo, or I'm from Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And they say, well, welcome to the hill country. And so I've always felt like a resident here very, very quickly. Our family acclimated to this area very quickly. Since then, I feel like I'm just rambling. I attempted to go in and clear stuff, but it was clearly God needed me at camp, making sure people were fed and watered, and ultimately that's been my role. And I can say that God has provided through all of that. All of our needs have been met, and it's been nice to be able to just tell a person, what do you need? I can get that for you. And sometimes you don't even know where it's going to come from. You just know God's going to provide that. And so it's been a very emotionally healing time as a resident on the river. And I think the hardest part for me, because I didn't personally lose someone, was I had 2 kids that ran off to college in August, or was it August? I've kind of lost track of time. I missed a month, their last month. My senior just graduated, and I missed a month of them because I would leave at 7:30 and get home at nighttime, and I was ready to crash and go to bed. But I tell my kids, if the banks were reversed, I would hope that my neighbors would be looking for me. And so Intrepid Care still has the camp out on Saddlewood Estates on a private owner's property. And we can continue to clean and help him reestablish his new normal. That big pile that was several stories high, wide, and deep is no longer. We had very, very carefully, one thing that I had appreciated by everyone was their thoughtfulness and professionalism, even though these were not trained professionals. People very skillfully and I can't think of the word, would pick up piles and drop them and make sure that it was clear before it got put into a larger pile and moved. And so the dogs, I saw several dog organizations that became friends with Catherine on the river. And she lives in Comfort, and just so many friendships forged on that river, lifelong friendships, I think. And I still, this morning, I called my neighbor, how's it going? And I'm currently working in Comfort at a warehouse that's been distributing goods to search and rescue, and then also helping like survivors in Hunt who are cleaning, and they need cleaning supplies, or they need sheets, or they need things. And so certain things that we can provide, or we can find them. Someone's like, I need a washer and dryer. And it's like, we will find that for you. And then they're like, we will deliver it to you also. So just last week, I had the same lady come through again, and I met her husband, and it's been nice to facilitate that and just be there for our neighbors. And, Mercy Chefs has been a huge blessing. Operation Barbecue, they were a solid for a while, and then it was time for them to go, and Mercy Chef then kind of filled that role, and then they went into a role for the weekdays and not on the weekends. And Hunt continues to provide meals for residents and workers, and it's just been so nice to do. My part has been to receive those things and then distribute them and make sure that people are taken care of. But we're getting ready to break down and move that stuff in a different capacity and role, so that devastation happens, and Mother Nature is wild, and you never know when the next one's going to hit. But I want to position myself to be ready to continue to help people. One thing I have truly gotten from all of this is you don't have to be a professional or have a title to go out and just help your neighbor. So to me, it's a love your neighbor as yourself, and so how could I not? And I can't say I would have ever thought I would have a mission trip in my backyard, but that's pretty much what it's been. And I think it's a witness to our kids as to what grown-ups should do in the event of a disaster. You help. You get up, and you help. And even if that's just distributing water and picking up people and dropping them off, and but in all of that, God is still working on the river and making good memories. And I remember the first time that not being on the river and went into town. I don't know if I went to pick up something at HEB, and it's just such an odd thing when you haven't left the river in 2 weeks and you need something from the store, and you just kind of, what am I doing here? I need to be back with my people and helping and working. And so it has definitely been a journey and a story, but God certainly brings beauty for ashes, and he's been faithful. And the river doesn't have the same tone that it did on the day of the flood, and it's not the same, but I think it's healing, and we'll get back to a new normal. And I'm just thankful and grateful for the outpouring of love and support from people in the community and people outside of the community. And so I have been in the river since then. I will say that if there is a way to dredge our rivers, I strongly recommend it. There's so much debris and clothes and things that we don't even know or are in the river that need to be removed. So I don't know what the plan is for that, but it would help our community to see that happen. But I would never wish or want this on anyone, but I also feel so blessed for the experience to be able to just see people at their absolute best, especially at a time where our nation has been so divided. To just see the best of people, it reminds you that people are good. That's all.
Thank you, Joy. And I have to say that the people like you, and our crew ran into you about 3 times, maybe 4 times.
Right.
The ones that brought us water, refreshments, they were angels. And you were definitely one of those angels during this time. So God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.